Tense times for a BC town this Monday night. The fears of frightening wildfire could flare up.
When it is a wind-driven fire, we do see that significant growth.
What's in the forecast? The lingering pain of the pandemic.
There's some dark nights.
The struggle for small businesses as the deadline to pay back federal loans creeps closer. Strike action, why economists predict more people will walk off their jobs.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with the threat from wildfires and the hundreds of people out of their homes in BC. This fire near the town of Osoyoos, a popular summer destination for tourists near the U.S. border, doesn't look threatening right now, but fire crews are keeping a close eye on it, knowing it can flare up in an instant.
And look at the fire keeps jumping. Tornado. It's a fire tornado.
It blew up on the weekend, winds whipping those flames straight towards town, turning the sky orange and prompting evacuation orders. A local state of emergency remains in effect. The wildfire has almost doubled in size since crossing into Canada. It's now more than 1,400 hectares, and conditions in that part of BC are so hot and dry, fire officials are taking nothing for granted. Heather Yourex-West is in the region tonight. Heather.
Donna, after a clear morning here in Osoyoos, it has become very smoky in this community as the Eagle Bluff wildfire burns into its third evening. The situation, however, is stabilizing enough that hundreds of residents are being allowed to return home after a tense and terrifying few days. It was sunshine and blue skies over Osoyoos Lake Monday, but things are far from normal in this holiday town. A sunny July day on the beach here is usually jammed with tourists, the water full of boats.
We were sitting at another restaurant and everybody around us, everybody on every table was on their phone booking something else for, for that night.
Whoa, look at that.
It was this terrifying scene Saturday night that sent everyone away. Flames covering the mountainside as the Eagle Bluff wildfire jumped the Canada-U.S. border, coming dangerously close to the BC town.
It was really a strong wind. You could see the embers jumping and creating fires in front of the big fire. Yeah, we watched it the whole night, pushing up on the mountain there, and at some point the wind changed and it started pushing the fire back onto itself.
By Sunday, the flames flared a second time. Crews responded, battling from the ground and the sky, dumping water and fire retardant on trees below. But it's the weather, and specifically the wind, that's been the key driver of this town's fate.
When it is a wind-driven fire, we do see that significant growth as that brushes forward and dries out the fuels that are in front of it as well, and then that helps them more easily ignite.
It meant flames inching closer to businesses in the darkness Sunday had retreated by dawn after the winds shifted overnight.
Are you feeling like you're out of the woods now?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. No qualms whatsoever.
Still, this remains a very dynamic situation, and while an evacuation order has been lifted for hundreds of residents, an evacuation alert remains in effect. The fire threat may have diminished, but there are many hot, dry days ahead. Donna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West, thanks. Well, fighting wildfires is dangerous work. Tonight, there's more information about the young firefighter from Ontario who was killed battling BC's largest blaze in history. Zachary Freeman Muse was 25 years old. He died when the utility terrain vehicle he was riding rolled over a steep drop on a gravel road. Muse was working as a contract firefighter north of Fort St. John, BC, battling the Donny Creek wildfire. He is the second firefighter killed in BC, the fourth to die in Canada this season. In Nova Scotia, the search for a youth still missing after being swept away in catastrophic flooding over a week ago has been temporarily suspended. RCMP say searchers have encountered deep pockets of water that are too dangerous to explore.
These pockets of water have low visibility and unpredictable terrain. As a result, a search of the ponds by the searchers would put them in risk of being injured.
Police do say those pockets of water are draining quickly on their own. 4 people went missing on July 22nd when their vehicles became submerged in floodwaters. The bodies of 2 children and a 52-year-old man have been recovered. The Canada Industrial Relations Board is warning the union representing BC port workers against changing its mind about ratifying another new tentative deal with employers. The board says it would be unfair labor practice. Both sides reached a new negotiated agreement last night that could finally bring an end to the month-long dispute that has paralyzed ports across Western Canada. Mackenzie Gray reports.
After nearly a month of negotiations, it's hoped the third time is the charm to end a costly labor dispute. A late-night statement from the International Longshore Workers Union says they've secured a negotiated tentative settlement with the BC Maritime Employers Association.
We now have a situation where there is another offer, there is another potential deal on the table.
Neither side offered a glimpse of the new deal, but previous tentative agreements haven't stuck. Union leadership rejected the first pact on July 13th, and on Saturday, the membership voted down a second agreement that included a 19.2% compounded wage increase over 4 years, a $3,000 signing bonus, and a lump sum retirement payment. The employer said that would boost the median annual wage for longshore workers to $162,000, excluding pension and benefits. But the union still had issues around contract workers and automation.
When you're faced with that kind of uncertain future, it's no wonder that you, a worker, would demand better working conditions in terms of automation or AI.
The 7,400 port workers have been on the job for the past 2 weeks, but uncertainty around the labor dispute led shipping companies and businesses to avoid sending goods through BC ports. That impact, combined with a 13-day closure from the strike, cost the Canadian economy billions and created a massive backlog of goods.
It'll take roughly 7 days for every day of strike before this is settled.
The economic impact's putting pressure on the federal government to find a resolution, leading Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan to call in the Canada Industrial Relations Board, who helped mediate the most recent tentative agreement.
Our serious, responsible government is going to continue to do the work necessary.
The longshore workers will vote on ratifying the tentative deal this Friday, and if it doesn't pass, expect the federal government to impose binding arbitration on both parties, Donna, to ensure the BC ports stay open.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. It has been a summer of strikes. A little later, we'll explore the common thread in the frustration of those on strike and why some economists warn there is more to come. The deadline is looming for hundreds of thousands of Canadian business owners who took out federal loans during the pandemic. Repayments under the Canada Emergency Business Account, or CEBA, are due at the end of December, and a growing number of businesses are pleading for an extension, saying they still haven't bounced back. Touria Izri reports.
For restaurants still recovering from COVID-19, it can be hard to look at the glass half full. Ivan Geddes owns a bar in downtown Ottawa and has not paid himself in 5 months.
I'm probably going to try and push through till the spring, but the amount that I'm leveraging my personal home in order to do that and so on and so forth is, there's some dark nights.
He's one of almost 1 million Canadian business owners who took out a federal loan to survive lockdowns and avoid shutting down permanently during the pandemic. And the due date is coming up. Ottawa offered a loan of up to $60,000, and there was a major perk. Up to $20,000 would be forgiven and no interest charged if the loan was repaid by December 31st, 2023. But for Geddes, that's not an option right now.
There's no way, even though we would love to take advantage of that forgiveness.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business is pushing the government for an extension. The CFIB warns 1/5 of Canadian businesses will be at risk of closing their doors unless the deadline is extended.
We're not saying forgive the debt. We're not going that far. We're telling them just give business owners, small business owners, more time.
Many business owners did not anticipate stubborn inflation, rising interest rates, higher food and fuel costs, and the fact office workers never fully return downtown. But some economists insist the money has to come from somewhere and that taxpayers can't subsidize struggling businesses. The federal government says it's already extended the deadline by a year.
In terms of a plan for paying back, there is currently none.
Gym owner Marc Langelier opened in the pandemic and needs some wiggle room.
It would push us into the red for sure. So now I think we would still give it a shot for the next 6 to 12 months.
Without an extension, Langelier fears his business and many others will disappear, along with the jobs that come with them. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
In the U.S., the property manager of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate made his first court appearance today. Carlos de Oliveira is accused of scheming with the former president to delete security footage connected to the investigation into alleged mishandling of classified documents found at Trump's resort. De Oliveira didn't enter a formal plea. His arraignment has been pushed to August 10th. Trump and his aide, Walt Nauta, have pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy to obstruct justice and lying to investigators. And Trump could be facing another grand jury indictment in the coming weeks. A Georgia judge has rejected the former president's attempt to derail his potential prosecution for trying to subvert the 2020 election results. A state prosecutor began an investigation after the release of a recording of a phone call Trump made to Georgia's Secretary of State. That phone call during which he asked him to find 11,780 votes, enough to have him win the state. An ultimatum issued in Niger. Coming up, what could happen if that country's president is not reinstated. Funerals are being held for the victims of a suicide bombing in Pakistan on Sunday. The death toll has reached 54. Nearly 200 others are injured. Supporters of a pro-Taliban political party were demonstrating in Pakistan's northwest near the border with Afghanistan when the blast happened. The so-called Islamic State is claiming responsibility. And the clock is ticking on an ultimatum for the military junta that orchestrated a coup in Niger. West African nations have given military leaders there 1 week to reinstate the country's democratically elected president, threatening force if their demands are not met. Strict sanctions are also being imposed, which could have an impact on one of the world's poorest countries. Crystal Gamansing reports.
A message on state television. Those responsible for the military coup warn Niger could be attacked in an effort to reinstate the president. The army spokesperson accuses France of plotting to strike with the help of those inside the toppled government. The claim further stoked internal frustrations. On Sunday, some residents burned the French flag, vandalized the embassy in Niamey, and chanted anti-French slogans. Niger was a French colony until 1960. The Economic Community of West African States did issue a notice to coup leader Sunday, saying it has zero tolerance for unconstitutional change, and that if the government was not restored within 1 week, it would take all measures necessary. The German defense minister is the latest Western leader to say the situation is being closely monitored. Like many Western nations, including Canada, it has soldiers in the region associated with training missions. Germany followed the EU, France, the UK, and the 15-nation West African bloc, freezing economic aid to Niger. Author and journalist Albert Chaibot says tough sanctions imposed on his country could be a means of deterring future coups in the region. I think we are really going to suffer economically. It's going to be a very difficult time for the country. The president of Chad, Idriss Déby, met with military leaders Sunday and appeared in and shared the first photo of Niger's elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, since he was taken captive July 26th. The international community condemns the unconstitutional change of government and has been demanding the release of Bazoum. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
In southern Ukraine, Russian missile strikes have hit President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown. Russia's attack destroyed 2 residential buildings and a university and administrative building. The strikes killed at least 4 people, including a 10-year-old girl, her mother, and buried others under the rubble. At least 43 people have been injured. In China, a typhoon has killed at least 2 people in Beijing and has dropped relentless rain on the Chinese capital. Cars were swept away after falling into a river when the bridge they were on broke in half. Another video shows a man clinging to a vehicle as it floats in floodwaters before he was rescued by firefighters. It is Beijing's worst flooding in a decade, turning hundreds of roads into rivers, forcing tens of thousands of people from their homes. Summer of strikes ahead. What's to blame for a wave of labor disputes? Labor unrest seems to be touching many lives this summer, from BC port workers to Toronto grocery store employees to writers and actors in the entertainment industry. Strikes are becoming a summer staple. Ann Gaviola looks at the common themes driving employees to strike and why economists say to brace for more.
Combine a tight labor market, the highest interest rates in a generation, and an affordability crisis, while the rich keep getting richer.
Just give us a little bit more, a piece of the pie. We help them to make this money, so we deserve better.
The summer of strikes is here, and economists say we should expect even more labor unrest. Whether it's BC port workers, screenwriters and actors, or Toronto area metro grocery workers, there's a common thread to the frustration.
Jobs being eroded, too much part-time work, not enough high-quality jobs with benefits and all of the things that we need in our lives to be able to support our families. And you can only do that for so long before people push back. And our members are right now pushing back and pushing back hard.
More than 3,000 Unifor members are striking at 27 metro locations. Unifor is the largest private sector union in Canada and also represents some Global News employees.
I've heard a lot of my coworkers talking about using food banks and myself, like I said, I've been 25 years with the company. I live in geared to income housing because I can't afford market rent anywhere else in the city.
In a statement Monday to Global News, Metro said it provided significant increases for employees in addition to improved pension, benefits, and working conditions that are among the highest in the industry.
Tiff Macklem last summer warned Canadian workers to moderate their wage demands. And he said that if you get a little too out of hand, you're going to be a source of inflation that we're not currently factoring into our forecasts. That's still true today.
In the case of the grocery workers, they saw a temporary bump in compensation during the pandemic. Canada's three largest grocery companies, Loblaw, Empire and Metro, reported more than $100 billion in sales combined and $3.6 billion in profit last year. What is eventually agreed upon here sets a precedent for future negotiations in the industry.
A new PwC poll shows 42% of Canadian employees say they have nothing left over for savings after paying their bills, and nearly 1 in 4 workers say they're looking for a new job in the next year. Another factor, anxiety about how AI will impact their industry and job prospects. All of this points to the potential for strikes this fall as well. Donna?
All right, Ann Gaviola in Toronto tonight. Thanks. What's next for Canada's national women's soccer team after their big loss at the World Cup?
Then you're crazy. I know you are, but what am I? You're a nerd. I know you are, but what am I? You're an idiot.
It was the irrepressible, childlike joy of his character, Pee Wee Herman, that made Paul Reubens famous. Reubens has died at the age of 70. In a social media post, his team said Reubens died from the cancer he'd been diagnosed with 6 years ago, something he'd kept private. With his red bow tie and signature gray suit, Reubens launched the whimsical Pee Wee Herman show in 1980, first on stage where it became a cult favorite and then on TV. A statement he wrote, posted on Instagram after his death, says, "I have always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you." Well, Canada's run at the Women's World Cup has come to a disappointing end. The team couldn't overcome the powerhouse Australian team, who are hosting the Women's Soccer Championship this year. Eric Sorensen reports on the loss and where it leaves Canada's women's team.
As always, Christine Sinclair was front and centre for Canada's biggest match. But when play began, the Australians quickly took control. And with the fans of the World Cup's host nation behind them, the Matildas never let up. A telling moment for the Canadian team and Canadian soccer came when the second half began. The greatest player of all time was no longer on the pitch. The 40-year-old Sinclair put on the sidelines where she would watch the team's World Cup come to an early end.
I think the team lacked belief. You know, I was with them right till the very end. They kept pushing. You know, we made changes, and it just wasn't our night tonight.
If not the end of an era, it signals a transition from the first great generation of women's soccer in this country, defined and led by Christine Sinclair. From her individual records, 190 international goals, all-time leader among women and men's soccer, to the Canadian team records, 2 bronze and a gold medal in successive Olympics. As the face of the Canadian women's game and a marketing brand for the sport, Sinclair has also led women's soccer off the field in its quest for equality. As she once told Global National's Donna Friesen, Sinclair has always been clear about her goals for the women's game.
Equal to men. Every chance that a guy gets, I want a girl to get. We're moving in the right direction, but like at a very slow pace.
She's been a remarkable servant to the national team.
John Molinaro says Canadian soccer must now evolve as other countries have caught up to the Canadian women.
This team has sort of relied far too much on Christine Sinclair for years now. It cannot simply rely on what worked on the past.
You say, could this be Christine Sinclair's last game? Breaks my heart.
The next generation of Canadian players like Olivia Smith represent a promising future. In September, Canada has a qualifying match for next year's Olympics. It's not clear what role Sinclair might play, but she acknowledged that change is coming, saying this was probably her last World Cup. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Hell Hill Pond near Cape Royal, Newfoundland and Labrador. Don't let the name fool you. It is a beautiful spot. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to us. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.